Sarah Sanders, Fox News contributor, former White House press secretary. She joins us today from Little Rock, Arkansas. Sarah, I bet you would agree with Brad Parscale, the president's campaign manager. The winner last night, not Pete Buttigieg, it was Donald Trump.
Absolutely, completely agree. And I think the big loser last night was Joe Biden. Once again, I think it was incredibly telling that all of the fire that was taken on stage was by Elizabeth Warren and not Joe Biden, indicating that even Democrats on that stage know that Biden is finished and that Warren is the new frontrunner. And I think that's even more good news for President Trump, not just the fact that the Democrats failed in the debate last night, but that Elizabeth Warren is their frontrunner, that she is the new face of the Democrat Party. That is a great contrast for this president, and I think it sets him up very nicely for re-election in November.
Sarah, can you imagine having you had somebody you worked for who never backed away from an interview. He does it twice a day now, just talking to the press. Joe Biden doesn't sit down for one-on-ones and doesn't go to any spin rooms after debates. He's no longer the prohibitive favorite. He is no longer leading in most polls. What do you really think is going on behind the scenes?
Well, I think it's a recognition of the failures of him as vice president for 8 years. I think it is showing that they didn't get anything done, the things they did, the American people don't want. And I think it shows the level of corruption that people think that the Biden family is actually engaged in. I thought that the questioning last night was weak and pathetic. Sadly, it is not surprising that CNN accused President Trump in their questions, yet gave Biden a complete free pass. They gave him one question, a very basic follow-up, and moved on. I couldn't believe that they glossed over the corruption that we've seen exposed over the last several weeks so quickly as they did last night, and that nobody else on stage even thought to call Biden out. I think, one, it's because they know that he and his family have been so deeply involved in that corruption, but more so because they know that he's no longer a factor in this race. I think they've already decided to write him off, and they're focusing their fire on Elizabeth Warren.
Well, since you mentioned that soundbite where Anderson Cooper said President Trump has falsely accused the Bidens of wrongdoing, we're going to play it. Watch this.
President Trump has falsely accused your son of doing something wrong while serving on a company board in Ukraine. I want to point out there's no evidence of wrongdoing by either one of you.
My son did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. I carried out the policy of the United States government in rooting out corruption in Ukraine. But I wanted to make a point about it. My son's statement speaks for itself. What we have to do now is focus on Donald Trump. He's going after me because he knows if I get the nomination, I will beat him like a drum.
And that's the soundbite we've heard before, Sarah.
And it's as laughable now as it was every other time that he said it. I thought it was interesting that Vice President Biden chose to say that his son's statement speaks for itself, particularly considering the fact that it contradicted his own statement. I think the reason he didn't want to talk about it, he didn't want to defend it, is because they were totally different. Whose line? Was it his son or was it the vice president? I also loved that Anderson Cooper says, while you were obviously not involved in any wrongdoing that we are aware of, they spent 2 years spending every single moment of their broadcast attacking the president for something he didn't do while claiming they had evidence. It is absolutely unbelievable, the hypocrisy that we saw on full display last night from CNN.
You know, I think you brought up a good point. I didn't think about that, about the questions and the topics. That's why it was really boring. It doesn't help the candidate to have easy questions. If you are a good candidate, you want the hard questions because it eliminates those also-rans that are just memorizing lines or phrases. So let's move on to something that would have been intriguing to bring up last night, and that is China in many respects. You got the trade situation, but you also have the Hong Kong situation. That was not brought up, along with the NBA, who is backing down because China wants them to, including one LeBron James, who never shrunk away from calling the president disparaging names, like calling him a bum. And here yesterday is what LeBron James got all this blowback from, saying this: we're not politicians, when asked about China condemning them off a general manager of the Houston Rockets tweet, when he tweeted out something in support of the Hong Kong protesters, says, I also don't think every issue should be everybody's problem as well. When things come up, there's multiple things that we haven't talked about that have happened in our own country that we don't bring up. I think the best thing we can do is, if you feel passionate about it, talk about it. If you don't have a knowledge about it or quite understand it, I don't think you should talk about it, because it puts you in a tough position. So a tough position, for example, if you have a big Nike deal and China makes most of Nike's shoes, you don't want to insult China? Is that a big deal?
I certainly don't support his position, but I also, frankly, don't care. He's a basketball player. But I do care about what all of the Democrats on stage would do about China, because it will be one of the biggest things that a president faces. We've seen President Trump be tough on it. We've seen him stand up to China. And it's not just about trade. It's about who is going to be the leader of the world. Is it going to be the United States, or is it going to be China? Under President Trump, I know it will always be the United States of America. Under those 12 Democrats on stage, I have no idea. I think each one of them would be weak on China, and I would have loved to have seen the moderators ask a question on that. I think it's one of the biggest challenges the next president is going to face, and the fact that they had 3 long, boring hours and didn't bring up one single question on China is mind-boggling.
You know, Sarah, they didn't even bring up Julian Castro when he got off stage. He tweeted, "No questions about climate, housing, or immigration." He said, but you know, Ellen, because remember they asked, the last question was about Ellen and President Bush hanging out. Why didn't they ask any of these questions? Climate change. If you ask some of the liberals, they'll say that is the biggest issue.
I think because they know that none of those things resonate. The Democrats' positions on those things don't resonate with the American people, and they didn't want to highlight all of those things. They know that they have failed on immigration. They've yet to deliver anything on that. All they do is fight with the president instead of fixing the problems. I think the fact they spent so much time on impeachment shows the Democrats' obsession with this issue. But let's be clear, focusing on impeachment doesn't deliver a single job. It doesn't fix health care. Right. It doesn't fix our broken immigration system. What it does is show that the Republicans and President Trump are the only ones that are actually delivering for the American people. If the Democrats really cared about all of the things that they stood up there and said that they did, they'd stop focusing on impeachment, start working with the president. Let's fix some problems. Sure. But I think that what their obsession is showed exactly what their priorities are in this race and what their priorities will be if they become president.
And that's why it's going to, right now, it looks like it's going to be a binary choice in November of 2020. Sarah, thank you very much for joining us live today from Little Rock, Arkansas.
Thank you. And if I can get one tiny quick thing in, it's my son's 6th birthday. Happy birthday, Huck. And I'll see you in just a few minutes.
Well, that's a nice wish, but you still have to buy him a gift.
What are you saying, Huckabee?
That's right. Don't worry. I'm coming home. No, his name is William Huckabee Sanders, and we call him Huck.
He's
and he's turning 6 today.
Oh, Huck Sanders.
Yeah.
That's great. Very nice.
That's a really cute name.
All right. Happy birthday.
6 years old. How special.
All right.
Time flies.
Thank you, Sarah.